Welcome to another episode of NFL News on the Boomer Bust channel. I'm your host, Terry, and today, about to stick my feet in the mud. Why not? I mean, no reason not to. So I wanted to jump in on this Booger McFarland thing. Like, I already had my comments about Haskins for the most part. And honestly, I mean, it's kind of whatever. But at the same time, Booger McFarland, well, I wouldn't say just him. Everybody is racing to put their 2 cents in the sports media, not the talking media, but hey, in sports media, everybody's racing to put their 2 cents in, and so Booger McFarland did theirs, and I feel like I don't think it was live, but it definitely seemed like that wasn't like. I don't know. I can't remember the timing, but it at least when I watched it, it seemed like they just found out. Or maybe he found out a little bit ago, but he seemed very much raw and unfiltered. So if you didn't see his comments, go see it. But apparently now, obviously I don't stay tapped into this stuff if you listen to me, but I don't stay tapped into the social media and all that stuff. So, but apparently he's getting backlash for it. And so I was just looking at some of the stuff people were saying. There's articles and all that. And I was just like, wow. And honestly, when he was saying it, I had not even one moment's thought that there was going to be backlash over this. I was like, this isn't necessarily something the networks want to talk about. Same thing with Kaepernick. Same thing with, any issues of that ilk, or even when the NBA started to do their measures to show their support of social justice and all that. They might not want to talk about it, but it needs to be talked about. So I was like, okay, but he's not saying nothing wrong. And then here he had backlash from people like that are supposedly for social justice and all that. Now, that's whatever, because I'm putting my support behind Booger McFarland, what he said. I thought he was 100% telling the truth. And the biggest thing that I see is that people are completely twisting what he said and taking it out of context. Because every article or headline or whatever is that Booger McFarland trashes black quarterbacks or hates black quarterbacks or takes black quarterbacks to task. That's not what he said. That's not even, he didn't even really make it about quarterbacks. Like he mentioned Jamarcus Russell and all that. And quarterbacks obviously are a leadership role that's much different than other positions, but it wasn't just about quarterbacks. That's not even what he was talking about. But yes, he was singling out African Americans, and that's fine. He's African American. And there was like, well, with the times that we are in, that's exactly why we need to talk about it. Because you're going to talk about what you know. You're going to talk about the people that come from your culture that look like you. You're going to talk about the people that you met and that you grew up with and all that good stuff, and the ones you see going through the issues. And like he said, he's talking about the group that makes up over 70% of the NFL. Like, it's not because you're a problem. It's because we are the valuable ones. And so when you have that type of value, and as we all talk about recently, especially with NBA and player movement, but we talk about player empowerment and really trying to make things happen with the cachet that you have. And so understanding your value to the league and what that really means and the opportunity that you have. And that's the reason you pointed it out. And that's the whole thing he was talking about, is this is the opportunity that you have in front of you, not to just be the starting quarterback or to make some millions of dollars. You have the potential to really, especially as a quarterback, to grab hold of the power position. Like Pat Mahomes right now can sway things as much as the NFL has, a much tighter clamp than the NBA does. You still have players that can be powerful together, and none more so than quarterbacks. And as a black quarterback, there's this dual role. I was going to say this duality, but there's a dual role or dual power position that you have to hold, because you are part of that major majority that the NFL is employing. And then you're also part of a small group that is the leadership position that is quarterback. So that's kind of what Booger was talking about. Now, calling out African American thing. Now, this is one thing, not one. This is one of many things that I definitely don't agree with whenever we're talking about issues of social justice or any issues in society and whatnot, is this idea that if you say anything negative, you're a part of the problem. So if you're in support of African American people, you can't say anything negative about African American people. If you're in support of LGBTQ people, you can't say anything negative. You can't point out anything negative unless it's wrapped up in blaming somebody else, which there's definitely space to talk about causes and symptoms of a larger system, yes, but to say that you can't ever point out anything negative is ridiculous. Now, I get it. Trust me, I do. There's a long history of people making this an individual problem. You're a problem because of who you are. And they extrapolated that back then when they were being really racist to turn that into, because you're black, you act like this. Because you're black, you can't think like this. Because you're black, you do this. Same thing with women. Because you're a woman, you can't do this. That's what they turn it into. It's an individualistic problem. It's not a problem of society that we created. It's a problem that you have because you were born like that. And so whenever somebody says something about an individual like Haskins or whatever, then they try to say you're perpetuating that same thing. And that's not exactly apples to apples. I think there's space, as I said, to have that conversation about larger systems, but then there is also space to talk about what's actually happening. And Booger McFarland, like many other players, especially retired players, they've been around many, many people, especially if you still work in the media. And so if you got a lot of people whining that have not even been around the game. I'm not even talking about playing at a high level. I'm talking about they have never coached anybody. They have never sat with any high school kids. They've never went to a college camp and worked with college players or talked with college players before a game. They haven't, been recruited. They haven't talked with college coaches. They have no real stake into the game, because if you do have a real stake into the game of football, you have a real stake into education. Whether people want to admit it or not, how much they want to divide it, you really do. Because if you're recruiting, or if you've had a player that's been recruited, or if you've been recruited, or if you're a family member of someone being recruited, then you know how that process goes, especially if you're a high priority. You know how that process goes, how they're coming to look for you. Not only are they coming to look for you and your family, they're coming to talk to your head coach at high school too. They're trying to grease up the coaching staff. They're trying to come to practice and see you, practice or whatnot. They're trying to figure out a little bit more about you. And then in the college side, the same thing happens with scouts. They want to know more about you. They're going to talk to the people. And so there's going to be an investment into everybody around you when it comes to that recruitment thing. And so the point of that is, like, the education part is going to come into factor. Now in the NFL, it's not as big because obviously there's no grades that you need to have to get in the NFL, whatever. You could drop out that semester and still go to the draft. So obviously it's not as big, but part of that, they still want to know. They might not go talk to the professors, but they're going to talk to the tutors. They're going to talk to the assistant coaches. They're going to talk to teammates. They want to see what type of player you are. How do you learn? How do you take in information? How do you process it? How hard do you work? And especially when you're talking about the quarterback position. So that education system is part of it. And if you are into that world at all, you see where a lot, not all, but a lot of talented players, what they come from as far as lower quality education, or where they come from as far as where they live and whatnot. And again, it's not everybody. There's a lot of players that have family that's well off, or family that were also NFL players and what have you. But there's a lot of kids, and then we're not even talking about the kids that don't make it to the league. If you're just talking about kids being recruited to college and all that, you would be astounded just how many talented kids never make it. If you never heard that in basketball, football especially, but all sports, some of the best players are the ones that never made it. And they don't make it because these are sports that are highly dominated by African American players, and these African Americans go through things and a lot of adversity that other groups don't go through. And so they don't always make it to college, physically make it. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to get too deep into that, but that's true. And if you are somebody that's been part of the system, you've seen it. Booger McFarland, I went through, he played with Brian Young at one point, or at least they knew each other. Brian Young graduated from my high school. So he threw a football camp when I was younger. And I went through 2 camps 2 years in a row and met Booger McFarland. Not to say that I even remember it like that because I was super young or that he said anything crazy, but he was out there. He was out there each year when they did that camp. And if you look through the stuff Booger does, he's around a lot of players. So I know. I mean, then obviously me as a coach, the teams I've been a part of, you go to the camps, the other schools you go through, the coaches you meet, like the stories you hear, the colleges you go through, you see how many people don't make it, how many people mess up, how many people stumble, how many take an opportunity and throw it away. Booger McFarland and other people can sit there and say, I've seen thousands of people trying to get to where you are, trying their hardest. That's all they want, trying to get to where you are, and for you to just throw it away. Not because you weren't good enough, that you gave it your best and you weren't good enough. You just threw it away because you didn't care enough or that you didn't want to put in the effort. And that's frustrating. That's frustrating to me to watch. And I get his frustration. I identify with it when he said it makes him mad. It pisses him off to see that happen. And so to talk about it in the lens of African American players, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with that when that's the high majority of the NFL? What's wrong with that when that's the high majority of the players that we're seeing being recruited in the colleges? What's wrong with that if that's the high majority of players that you see in the places that you go or the places that you come from or the people that just look like you in your culture? What is wrong with us having a conversation about us? And so if you want to talk about a specific situation with other people you've seen, or if there's something that's going on that you know about with a specific group that we've seen, numbers have told us this is what happened with Mexican athletes. This is what happens with low-income white athletes. If you want to talk about that, cool. But if you want to have a more intimate conversation about what you actually know in the shoes you walk through, then what's wrong with that? And so that's when he wants to talk about African American players. And that's not to say, and not at any point did he ever say it's only them. He never said it's only African American players. It's only African American quarterbacks. No, he's saying that's what he's seen it. And that's the ones that bother him the most. That's what he wants to speak on. And I feel like that's perfectly fine. People turn this into oh, well, you're just trying to say Johnny Manziel didn't do nothing or Ryan Lever. No one said that. And it's funny because it's the exact same opposite of what these people complain about. When you say Black Lives Matter and this, and then they twist it, well, what about these lives? What about these lives? And you're like, that's not the conversation I'm having. Booger says, I want to talk about these black athletes messing up the opportunity. What about this quarterback? What about this player? What about that player? That's not the conversation we're having right now. And so I get it. You could put Haskins in just the strict quarterback or the strict didn't do well category, but that's not the category that Booger is addressing. We're addressing, and it happens a lot, but because of where you were drafted as far as draft position and as far as the position you play, it's more highlighted. Trust me, there's many players that don't show up for practice or don't know their playbook correctly or party more than they actually practice or they don't work out or whatever. They're throwing away the opportunity, but they're not as on the stage as Dwayne Haskins, again, because of the position he played in the draft position that he has. And so that comes with the territory. You got to be ready for that. Now, I'm not here to critique Haskins because I've already done that. But as far as what Booger is saying is valid. And then, again, it happens all the time, but that doesn't mean that we get to just shrug it off. Everybody wants to become desensitized. Like, I've seen players and everybody reacted to it. Oh, man, you know how many players do that? You know, I know players that do stuff like that. I was with players that did this. That doesn't mean it's okay. I don't care if someone did it 1,000,000 times. It doesn't make it okay. When you have the opportunity that thousands of people that look like you want, that they fight for and don't get, you have the opportunity to make that money and more money. You have the opportunity to be in a position that for many years, many players like us didn't get to be in that position. And when you get to do influential things in this league and you throw it away, then it makes it's worse. It's worse. Yes, it's worse than the sixth string special teams guy that's not trying and about to leave the NFL. That sucks too, but this is even worse. This is on a bigger platform, and it's sad to see it. It's sad to see this happen. When you see so many kids who are now grown men who never got to realize their dream. Yes, it's sad to see Haskins, and yes, Booger's right to call it out. And so this idea that he was somehow being an Uncle Tom or something, I don't get it. Like, so we're not just supposed to say any criticism. We're supposed to act like it's cool. Like somebody saying he's mad watching black quarterbacks live their lives. Really? He's mad watching yes, he's mad watching Haskins live. If the life you live in is being a third string, first round pick and then getting cut 2 years into your career, yes, I'm mad at him living that life. It's ridiculous to me. So that's my thoughts on it. Go down comment section. Let me know what you think. Share around, get the conversation started, and thumbs up, subscribe. Thank you for listening.